Uh-oh, we're in trouble. You need to cut that bad habit. Okay, we're going to start over. We are you are listening to the Utah Main Street Media, and this is the Liberty Mom Show. We're so happy to have you join us, and we're really excited. We have a great show for you. It doesn't matter if you live in Utah or you live outside of Utah. We're going to be discussing a lot of legislation that is in Utah, but it will also be in your state if it isn't already there. And we have an amazing guest today, and his name is State Treasurer Marlo Oakes, and we're so happy to have you, Marlo. Marlo is very, very busy. He has been just an incredible asset to not just the state of Utah, but literally to our entire state. He has been traveling all over the United States, teaching people about what is happening, what is coming down, specifically regarding ESG, which is environmental, social, and governance, and how this agenda has infiltrated our state of Utah and our country. And now he has been talking about NAC, and I can never remember the acronym for that. And so he is working really hard, and he's traveling. So we are very blessed that we're able to catch him while he's traveling. So welcome, Treasurer Marlo. Thank you.
Thank you, Dalane. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, thank you. And you've been up in Idaho speaking. And even when you're in Idaho speaking, you're still speaking all over the country via Zoom and talking to other people.
Yes.
Okay, so Marlo, tell us what does NAC stand for? I got to get it in my mind.
Yeah, it stands for Natural Asset Company.
Natural.
Yeah, so there is an effort, and it's all based in the climate crisis, but also an additional narrative is really appearing now, and that's biodiversity and the erosion of biodiversity, meaning plants and animals. And it's really because of climate change and human impact. And so we've got to take these drastic measures to protect the environment and really species and plant life and address climate change. And so natural asset companies are one effort and a very serious effort to address those supposed problems that we have.
Yeah, and do we care about our environment? Absolutely.
Yeah,
we totally care about environment. The question is, who cares the most about our environment? Yeah. Who cares more about our environment, the people in Utah, than the people who live in Utah, who have to deal with that?
That's right, and that's why the people who are closest to the land and who are dependent on the land really are in the they have the greatest incentive to take care of the land, and so what's one of the problems with this climate crisis narrative is that it's a global crisis. It's not well defined, and there is an attempt to silence any kind of debate around it. And because it's global in nature, we're seeing global solutions offered. And so this is where we're seeing globalism really take a hold and attempt to really replace many of our key institutions. The one that I'm most concerned about is economic freedom and our free market capitalist system.
Okay, I love that, because I was just going to say, for those people, because there are a lot of people who cannot understand what is the problem, where we live in a very international society. We do commerce with other countries. Like, what is the problem with having a one world government or a global system or a global, and of course we have a global economy. So, but I love your answer was very, very clear, but let's maybe drill down on that. It affects our economic freedom. And we know that the free enterprise was established on having economic freedom and on a moral foundation to exchange equal value with others. It was not based on, I will make money at your expense, regardless of what happens to you. I just care, right. Crony capitalism. It was not based on crony capitalism. It was based on a system where we would exchange with each other in a moral foundation. When you have a moral foundation, it's a win-win, because we both exchange things of value. And that is not what is happening here, is it?
No, that's right. And really, you just need to look at some of the statements that have been made by organizations like the UN is pushing this agenda. So back in 2018, the UN commissioned a study, and the headline that came out of that is, "We cannot fight climate change with capitalism."
Right.
You know, AOC's chief of staff back in 2019 said the Green New Deal wasn't originally about climate. It was about how do you change the economic system. Christiana Figueres, back in 2015, she was the head of the UN IPCC, the climate group at the UN, who was responsible for the Paris Climate Accord. She said this is the first time in the history of the world that we have intentionally tried to change the economic system that's been in place for the last 150 years. And so clearly that is the pretext.
And it is a pretext, and it is a false premise, because as you said, when people try to bring up statistics and evidence, they are shut down.
That's right. And there's no other system that has created more innovation than our free market system, because you have to pursue outcomes that they would otherwise are not free to pursue. And our economic system puts us at the center of that system. Its businesses are trying to meet our demands, not the other way around, where we're being dictated as to what we can buy. Now we're seeing more of that with, the Biden administration recently with electric vehicles. Now those electric vehicles are sitting unsold in lots across the country. We're just seeing an amazing attack and really twisting of our economic system that's incredibly dangerous, because if we have no economic freedom, we have no other freedoms.
We don't. You cannot be free if you don't if you're not able to keep the proceeds of your own labors. You cannot be free. You are literally in bondage.
Yeah, or choose how you're going to spend your money,
yes.
or be restricted in how you spend your money. I mean, these are all things that are, unfortunately, these are not pipe dreams anymore. We're seeing this effort around the world. For example, in China, with their social credit score and their central bank digital currency, there's technology today that can control behavior unlike we've ever had in the past. And so people just need to understand what's at stake.
Everything. You're so right. And Marlo, that's why you are such a great asset, is because you understand these things and you're able to articulate it in a way that people can understand it and identify with it. And that is one thing that I wanted to mention is so amazing about our great Constitution in this country, that right in Article 1, Section 8, we have protection of copyrights and patents. So when we in America come up with an amazing idea and an invention, and the founders were, again, so wise and so intelligent in that the way they did patents, that they are for 7 years. So if you have an incentive to come up with some amazing creation and idea, and then it's patented, so no one can steal your idea. They can't copy it and take it from you. So you get to create a living off of that, or value. And because you've created value, you get compensated for it. And then in order to also create more value and incentivize more people in taking your product and making it better and improving on it, which is what America is, always improving, the patent is expired after 7 years, so that because you can renew it, or someone else can take your invention and they can make it even better. And that is why we fly all over the world in airplanes, and we have jets, and we have phones and computers that we can carry around in our hands, because of that creative innovation, which doesn't happen the same anywhere else in the world. And it's because of our Constitution and the protection of our not only physical property, but our intellectual property as well.
That's right.
And you have stated it. We must protect this, and there is a huge target to take. Once you take America down, you've taken the world down. Am I right?
Yes. And there's an analogy with our legal system. So the legal system, decisions are to be made based on the law and the law alone. And that's why Lady Justice wears a blindfold. As soon as Lady Justice takes off the blindfold, you introduce things like empathy and who is the oppressor and who is the oppressed. And once you start making decisions in the legal system, not just on the law, but other political issues, you corrupt the legal system. In our economic system, those decisions are to be made on economics and economics alone. That's why we have merit and choosing, through competitive processes. We make our decisions based on economic benefit. And as soon as you introduce something other than economic benefit and start forcing companies to take into consideration other things, political things, you have corrupted the economic system and destroyed the economic freedoms that we enjoy. That's what's happening today with things like environmental, social, and governance. And that's one of the threats of natural asset company.
Right. So how are these natural asset companies, how are they coming into the state of Utah? How can we protect ourselves against them, and what are they actually doing?
So a natural asset company, the idea was the New York Stock Exchange went to the Securities and Exchange Commission and asked for a rule that would allow them to list these kinds of companies on the exchange. So it would be publicly traded companies that could then raise capital from investors around the world. And then that money would be used to secure the management rights of public or private land. And the management would be focusing on maximizing what they call ecological services. And so that's basically financializing Mother Nature. So you might think of it as what is the value of photosynthesis? The problem is that yes, these ecological services are invaluable. They are absolutely critical to life on Earth. And so they do have value, but they do not have an economic value. And now we're trying to make them into economic entities or things that can be bought and sold, owned, and traded. And as soon as you do that, you've created a commodity out of what was previously a public good, something that all of us benefit from and all of us, frankly, absolutely need. And so
The general welfare.
we are literally. Absolutely. And so we are to allow to own public goods that everyone can on, which means you are opening the door to allowing somebody who owns something to others for the use of that particular thing. And because it's not based on economic activity, the NYSE needed a rule to allow them to use a different kind of accounting standard, which is based on the United Nations ecological economic accounting. It's basically assigning arbitrary value to things that aren't based on economic activity. And so it's dangerous in so many different ways, because you're essentially introducing a company whose purpose is to go and find land that is high in natural resources and lock up those resources so they can't be extracted, and conducting unsustainable activity. And basically that's the economic activity that is critical to our nation's survival and the well-being of everyone. And so it's just so problematic on so many levels. And really those who are harmed the most would be rural America, because they produce so much of the natural resources and the agriculture, and those who can least afford it, the people who are suffering the most from inflation, because this would be an economic shock, a supply shock. When you take all of these resources off the market, then you're beholden to others to supply those same resources. You have increase in price and national security issues on top of that. It's unbelievable how bad this is.
It is unbelievable. It is really hard to wrap your brain around that it's very real. But when you take a state like Utah, where 65% of our lands are already tied up by the federal government, and then you look at how we are already limited in using our natural resources, and Utah is loaded with natural resources, and where this could actually, well, and it would put a huge impact on that. Do you feel that this is a direct attack on farmers?
Yeah, I mean, farmers are certainly targeted, and one of the key ways that they are being targeted is through conservation easements.
Yes.
And so a conservation easement is where they sell future development rights and get a tax break for that. Unfortunately, the restrictions on conservation easements are in perpetuity and very detailed. And so it ends up being very harmful down the road when the economy changes, technology changes, how farming is done changes. It's just, you're really locked in, and the value of your land is hit pretty significantly. And so conservation easements are one of the key mechanisms that the Biden administration is focused on right now, and they've set aside a lot of money to try and entice as much land into conservation easements, because those easements, they can basically, the management rights to an easement can end up in a natural asset company.
Unbelievable. Okay, so Marlo, what can we as citizens, what can we do about this?
Well, I'm very pleased to report that yesterday around this time, the New York Stock Exchange pulled the rule from the SEC, and so they no longer are pushing to have a natural asset company listed on their exchange. So that is fantastic news. This is a bigger agenda to continue. They, meaning people like the Intrinsic Exchange Group, the idea of a natural asset company, and the Biden administration that is really trying to promote this idea of ecological services. They bought into this idea of preserving 30% of the land and water in the country by 2030, and what that means is that basically preserving it at the level of a national park or a wildlife refuge, where the human impact is restricted considerably. And in today's in the United States, we only have about 12% of the land that would reach that definition. And so this continues to be a very serious threat that we face. And so I'm just grateful for the opportunity to talk about this, because people need to be aware of what's happening, and we need to really educate ourselves on conservation easements and understand the importance of private property ownership for the long-term freedom of this country. As more land consolidates under the federal government and under these restrictions, we lose our freedoms significantly, and that's incredibly important for people to understand.
It is. And Marlo, how would we ever regain those freedoms? I don't really see a way outside of a real serious war of blood that we could ever get. I don't see that we could ever get. I don't want to be a negative, but I just can't see a way out of it. Once you give up all of those rights and your ability to buy land and own the American dream, how would you ever restore that? When we did get it, it was through the Revolutionary War. It was very horrific. So, okay, I just wanted to mention this week a man named Ezra. He is over at in Switzerland, and he is at Davos, and he said that every single day 150 private planes land in Davos for this global summit. And so the people who are pushing this and promoting it are not concerned about the environment. They are not, or they would not be flying their private jets in at 150 a day.
And you would see more nuclear, more support.
Very good point. I think we might have lost Marlo, but very good point. If they really believe this, if this was a real issue, they absolutely would be pushing nuclear energy, because it is so incredibly clean and efficient and effective. And there are ways to make it to ensure that there's massive safety, which we would want to do with everything and anything. And so that's another way that we can tell how insincere they are. I just want to thank Marlo. He is traveling, as I stated, and I think we might have lost connection, but we're going to just kind of hold on and see if he comes back. But we just want to say thank you so much to Marlo, not only for being here today, but for all the amazing work. He is really dedicated at great sacrifice to himself and his family. He totally gets duty is mine, results are God's, because he is really making a lot of sacrifices, and his family, they are also making a lot of sacrifices to help get this word out and to help us. So This is something that is really important, and we have quite a few laws in the state of Utah that are up in session right now that are regarding NAC, on a lot of regarding public-private partnerships, which is really what it comes down to. The natural asset company is basically a PPP, a public-private partnership, saying that they are going to sell our lands to a public entity, a public and a private enterprise, which I'm all about. I have two businesses. I'm all about private enterprise, but we want to be sure and keep a separation between the private sector and the government sector. We all, again, lose rights and we lose our liberties when we intertwine those two. And just really quickly, while we're on this, I'm going to explain how. Because it's really hard for people to understand how a public-private partnership, a partnership between a private entity and a government can be not a good thing. It sounds wonderful. It's being presented as, when you have a company that puts money in and does what a government would do or could do or does do, then you don't have to tax the citizens for it. So that sounds really good. But what you're actually doing is you're giving power and stewardship to a private organization. So first of all, you have to pick winners and losers. You have to pick a company that's going to be the winner here. And that company is actually going to be funded by the taxpayers. And that company is going to be able to do things that the government cannot do because now they're in partnership. The government has restrictions on what the government can do, but a private entity is allowed to do those things. So then it also gives the government power to do things through a company that a government couldn't do. The government can't violate your First Amendment rights. They can't violate your privacy rights. But a company can say, you know what, if you want to do business with us or if you want to work for us, then they can take those rights away while you're involved in there. One example I think is a really great example that everyone can really relate to. It's very simple. And in a city in the state of Utah, this has been proposed, and I haven't been able to verify whether it has actually happened or they're still talking about it happening or if it's just up for vote. But say a city of any city in any state sells their roads and their parks to a private enterprise. Now, the citizens do not have to pay for snow removal. They do not have to pay for upkeep of the park. It sounds wonderful, doesn't it? Doesn't it sound awesome? Now that's going to save the citizens a lot of money. Now the private business now has control over our roads and over our parks. Who gets to decide when the parks are open, or who gets to decide who uses the park and how the park is used? The government controls the park. It has to be equal opportunity for everyone, equal rights, equal rules, equal privileges or rights, equal access to everyone. When a private company owns it, the private company can decide. They will decide, do you want to have a barbecue? Well, if you're going to drive your gas-powered car, you're not going to be able to drive it on our streets or to our park. Or if you want to have a family gathering or maybe sing some certain songs that they don't agree with, or your political or your religious views differ from this private entity, do we want laws that tell a private entity that they have to let you as a citizen use their private business, their private property the way that you want to? No, we don't. That's a complete violation of the American dream and our right to ownership. And so you have private entities owning roads. You are going to lose your freedom to use those roads the way that you want to. The citizens will not have equal access or equal protection on those roads. And so that's a simple explanation or a simple example, but this is a very real problem. I'm telling you, it's very real. And just as State Senator Marlo Oaks stated, this is a really big problem with an NAC, Natural Asset Company, because our natural assets in the state of Utah will be put up for auction and bought by private companies. So
Dalane,
yes.
Marlo is back. Would you like
wonderful.
to continue?
Yes, I would love it.
Hang on, I'm going to drop him in. Hold on. Here we go.
Great. So it looks like we're going to be able to rejoin Marlo back with us. Marlo, how's your trip going?
Good. Sorry about that.
You know what? Technology is so awesome that we can even do this.
That is
But
amazing.
technology, as in AI, is not always, it doesn't work perfectly. So we have to keep that in mind.
That's right.
Okay. So we were talking about, I kind of finished up on it. I'm trying to remember because I've talked about a few things since then. What else would you like the citizens? I would like you to tell us what, as private citizens, what can we do? What can we do about this?
Well, I think it's important for citizens to educate themselves on things like conservation easements
Yes.
and ESG, environmental social governance. There's a lot of companies that still don't understand the downside of it. They hear the positive elements of it, and they just don't recognize how this is completely counter to our free market system. And so, the programs like this are really important to educate people. And so I'm grateful for that the opportunity to talk about this, and people just need to understand our constitutional form of government and protect those those constitutional rights. They're there to protect us, and so educating about those things is really important.
That is the purpose of the federal government and the state government, is to protect our rights, our God-given rights. So and we can't really do that if we don't know what they are. So I love your suggestions. First of all, people need to know our Constitution and our constitutional rights. And then they need to know what's going on. So I love that. Education as a teacher, I love that. People, when they are educated and get educated on an issue, then they know how to get involved and they can do it. So we can be really careful about who we do business with. When we make contracts, we can make sure our contracts, what they really mean, because we have to be very careful of the words that conservation easement and conservation, because I think most people in America are conservationists. We all want to preserve and conserve our resources. And we have to make sure that the real meaning of those easements or the language in contracts means what we think it means, because it often doesn't.
That's
very
right.
Good advice.
That's exactly right. And there's a great website, AmericanStewards.us, that has a lot of great information about conservation easements. There's a document there. It's a conservation easement or conservation servitude. Really, the conservation easement, the way it is set up in the United States, it's more like servitude, because you are giving over control of your land in perpetuity, and now you're beholden to another party who can tell you what you can and cannot do on your land. And so oftentimes it's sold as a great way to get a tax break and to preserve the land for the use that it's currently being used for, but you are essentially giving up your private property when you enter into that. And so it's really important that people understand the trade-offs that are there, because oftentimes they don't understand, and you end up essentially without the private property that you had at one point.
Absolutely. Okay, you know what? I just want to give, while you're answering your phone, Marla, or quieting it, I want to give everybody we do have a call in, and we want to let everybody know if they would like to. Well, are you willing to take calls? I know you are, Marlo, but I should ask you in front of everybody.
I just have to make sure that I'm not missing something here on my schedule.
Okay, yes, go right ahead. So if Marlo can stay, and even if he can't, you can still use his call-in number, because we'll be talking about some of the Utah bills after Marlo is gone. The number is 385-899-2134. We will repeat that in a minute if you need to grab a pen. But I just want to let you know you are listening to Main Street Media Utah, and that is the reason that Main Street Media is here, so you can get educated and know what's going on and get informed, and you can do something about it. And you can also reach out to our legislators, because we have 104 senators and House of Representatives in the state of Utah, and almost every one of them are amazing, great people, and they need to be educated. Their intentions are pure, but they are passing laws that are violating our freedoms. not with an ill intent at all, because they, again, don't recognize this language as nefarious. It sounds good. Well, we're conservationists, so we want to preserve. We want to be careful. I also wanted to tell everybody that website that you said, americastewards.us, right?
Yeah,
America's,
AmericanStewards.us. Yeah.
is it America's with an S?
American, I believe.
American, thank you.
Yeah.
AmericanStewards.us. So that is a great place that people can go and get more information. And I am going to be getting on there myself quickly. Okay, Marlo, what else would you like to share with us? We know we don't have very much time with you, and you're a wealth of information. So I would love to give you that platform.
Well, thank you. You're very, very sweet. I think, I just think it's important what we have said, and really appreciate the chance to be on and continue to talk about these issues that everyone should be concerned about. So thank you. And unfortunately, I do have to run, but I appreciate
No problem. You've been so
it.
generous, longer than we anticipated. Thank you, Marlo. Travel safely.
All right.
Thank you so much. Thank
Uh-huh.
you. Great day. Okay, well, we are so grateful to State Treasurer Marlo Oaks for being with us, and that was very informative. And I just want to give you that website again, AmericanSteward.us. I would invite every single one of us to go on that website and get information. And then our call-in number is 385-899-2134. So if anybody wants to call in with a question or a comment, we welcome you to do that. And until that happens, we are going to talk about some of the legislation in Utah. And I promise you that the numbers will be different in a different state, but the content will be very similar, if not exact. So, and if you don't have a bill that we're talking about that's a good bill that is being presented in your state, then I would invite you to call us, and we will help you get the language to the bill, and you can go to one of your legislators in your state and get this presented so that you can get excellent legislation to protect your freedoms and liberties in your state as well. So we are going to start, I think I'm going to start with HB 290 in the state of Utah. It's called ranked choice voting. And I feel like this is a really, really important bill, because our vote is really important. If you don't have a vote, you don't have freedom. Just as Marta was, if you can't own property, if you can't have control over the proceeds of your labor, you don't have freedom. You're in bondage. If we can't elect our representatives, we don't have freedom. If someone else is choosing those, we are not free. And that is really what constitutes a free nation, is that we are allowed to vote, and that the vote is accurate and fair and counted by multiple people, so that it's seen and people are aware and people can see that there's transparency and that it is an accurate vote. So I'm going to quickly explain what ranked choice voting is. Ranked choice voting is where, instead of voting for the person that you want to win, you rank your choices based on everyone that's running, and you rank them in priority. So it sounds really good. It's like, oh, it's really nice. I'm not actually voting against anyone. I get to vote for everyone. I just put them in priority of the order that I would like to have them. But what ranked choice voting actually does, two things, there's more than that, but two important things. One is, if you really do ranked choice voting, you're voting for people that you don't want to win. Why would you want to cast a vote, even at third place or last place, for a person you don't want to get in office? The most important reason to be against ranked choice voting, to oppose it, is that it gives you a different outcome than if you vote traditionally, where you vote a person that you want to win. Now, the reason that people like ranked choice voting, or that it's showing being promoted, is because it does save time. It's very efficient. You do one ballot and you vote, and it does make voting faster. But I will tell you, as a person who has counted both regular voting, real voting, where you vote and then you count, and then the top two, or depending on how many people are below, you drop off the lower counted votes, you remove them, and then you go back and you vote again. So it takes longer to actually cast the votes, because you might have to do multiple rounds. With ranked choice voting, you do one round. But let me tell you, as a person who has counted both traditional and counted ranked choice voting, it is extremely difficult and time consuming to count. It takes a long time. And not only does it take a long time to count, it also is very hard to count twice because it takes so long and to get it accurate. And it really is a nightmare in counting it. I think if you would ask 10 people that have tried it, 9 out of 10 people would say it's a nightmare. The other reason that I think is the most important reason, though, that is by far more significant than anything else, because I'm really into efficiency, but I think when it comes to voting, we shouldn't worry about efficiency as much as we should worry about accuracy. But the other thing is I want the person who won, who actually would win. I don't want that outcome to change because it will with ranked choice voting. It might not, but it usually does. So what I want I don't want to vote for somebody until I know if they're still in the race. If you have 5 people in a race and you rank their choices and you put your list of priorities, you vote for number 3. But you know what? If you would have known that they were eliminated in number 1, then you wouldn't have voted for them in 2 or 3. So the thing is, I don't want to vote for a candidate who is no longer in the race after the first round or who is no longer in the race after the second round. I want to vote. I want to know who's in the round now, who's my best choice in now, who's in this position, who's in this race, because once someone's been eliminated, they are no longer in the race. So I want to vote based on who is still in the race at the time I cast my vote. And with ranked choice voting, you're casting a vote on people that you don't know whether they'll still be in the race when it comes down to them counting your vote. You don't even know if they're a candidate anymore. So this is really a way. I'll tell you what happens with most of the time. The person who gets the second greatest votes will end up being the winner, because the person who gets the first will be a small amount of people. Not maybe a small amount, but they probably won't get 50% plus 1. The people to come in last usually aren't 50% plus 1. But the person who gets the middle, the number 2, a lot of people, they're kind of in the middle, they're kind of wishy-washy. It's a number 2 person, and that person will often get 50% plus 1 of votes, so they end up winning. Now, the problem with that is you don't get the person that people really want the most to get in. And you'll see when a lot of people run for office, they will say, well, if you won't give me your first vote, please be sure and give me your second. That's because they know perfectly well second place often wins. So they're not even trying to get your first place vote. They're trying to get your second place vote because they're more likely to win if they have your second place. Is that what we want? Do we want second placers to end up becoming the representatives of the people? That is not what I want. So sorry about that long explanation. So back to the bill. HB 290, ranked choice voting, is being sponsored by Katie Hall. She's a new representative from the northern part of Utah. She is adorable. She is awesome. She's very principled. She's a great representative. She's very well intended, and she's very courageous, because this is courageous to take on this bill. It's an excellent bill, and I hope that you will get behind her. And here's what we need you to do. We need you to contact your legislators, both your House of Representative and your senator. And right now we need you to call the House, and we need you to say, this is really important. We want accurate votes, and please vote for this bill. And if the legislators get enough pressure, enough push, enough insight from their constituents and from the people of this community and of our state, there's a very good chance they will vote for this and it will pass. So I ask every single person, contact your legislator and call them and say, please vote for this. Here's how you know who your legislator is if you don't know, or if you want to know what their number is. Go to le.utah.gov, le.utah.gov, and then when you get there on that screen, it will give you some boxes, and you kind of scroll down, and there's a box that says My Legislators. And if you click on that, it will tell you who your legislators are, and then it will also, you can click on their picture, and it it will also give you your their phone number and their email address. So that is how you can find out whoever. You just put your address in there. You don't put your name or anything. You put your address, and then you just click on that, and you go right there, and it brings them right up for you. And if you happen to have a relationship with another legislator, or you have one that lives near you, or just you're right outside of the area, then I highly recommend that you also contact them. If there's anybody else that you can contact, please do, because that helps as well. And I am, I used to be better at multitasking than I am right now. It's very difficult when I'm doing this, but I do want to, and I would like to invite our next guest, who is really amazing. And she did not receive the link, so I am trying very hard to resend the link to her and see if I did something wrong, or for whatever reason she did not get it. Her name is Jennifer. She's brilliant, but she is also very engaged, and she does a lot of good, and she's very educated, and she is really a lover of freedom and liberty, and I just have so much respect for her. And I'm really excited that she could come on, but she is waiting to get the link so she can join us, and I am waiting for her to join us. So I have sent that link again, and I am going to keep my fingers crossed that she will get that link and she will be able to jump in. And so in the meanwhile, we are going to go ahead and talk about some other bills, because I am telling you, there are a lot of amazing bills, and there's some terrible ones. Another bill that I really want to talk about is SB 73. It's a Senate bill. It's called Food Security Bill. This is a really important bill because it does several things. The food that is grown and manufactured or packaged and sold in Utah is removed from the Commerce Clause. The federal government can't control our food. But what is happening in the state of Utah, which we know through COVID, is there are other entities that are trying to control our food sources and our ranchers and farmers, as we were talking about with Marlo. This is a really big issue. And so because that's a big issue, it's not just the national feds that are trying to control our lands and our economy. There are also local government agencies that want to control it. So what this bill does is it says the health department cannot control our food growth and marketing and sell. Now, of course, in the bill, it says that all these entities, and I will tell you the other two, they will have the legal ability to do their legal responsibility and their job. Inspect our food and make sure food is safe. Great. We want the health department to do the job of the health department. That is fine. But what we don't want is the health department to come in and control our food and control who grows, when they grow, how they grow, to decide on fertilizers, decide on water usage, or to just shut down our food grow or our ranchers. And so this bill does three things. It says the health department cannot control it. It also says we cannot have an emergency executive order regarding this. And it says rulemaking authority cannot control our food supply or source. And our governor is elected, but he is one person, or if we have a female that it becomes a governor, then they cannot, so it's not sexist, they cannot have the power through an executive order, one person shutting down or controlling our food supply. So it says someone unelected or unaccountable. The health department is not elected. The governor is, but it's one person. The rulemaking authorities are not elected. So it would just cut them out from their power and authority over our food supply. It does allow the legislature. They are elected and they are accountable, and it is a body of 104. So in order to control the food supply, it would have to be handled by those 104 people. that we can talk to and lobby and understand where they're coming from. And the decision is made by a large group. So that is SB 73. And I hope that you will contact your legislators and make sure that they know that we support this bill. In its current state, we do not support the bill. It needs to be amended. And so, make sure when you talk to them, those 3 things were in the bill. Say, we want to be sure that the health department cannot control it, that and no executive orders. And we also want to be sure that no rulemaking authorities. I do not know what that
Dalane,
noise is. Yes.
Jennifer has arrived.
Wonderful. So
I'm gonna drop her in.
Okay, we are so happy to have Jennifer with us today. And I've already introduced Jennifer. She's an amazing Liberty Mom. Liberty Moms are the original secretaries of defense. We are the real defenders of the home front. And Jennifer is a real Liberty Mom, and we're really excited to have her. And we're going to be discussing some other bills. So welcome, Jen.
Let's see if we can hear her.
Hi, Jen.
Can you hear? Hi.
Yep, you're coming through loud and clear. We can hear you very well. So we're so thrilled for you to be here. I have talked about ranked choice voting, and I have talked about, which is HB 290, and I have talked about SB 73, the Food Security Bill. And I have a huge list of other amazing bills that are really great, because I like to focus on the great bills. But you know what's true? As you well know, Jen, we have a lot of bills that are just horrific. And I've already explained to our listeners, they are not being sponsored by terrible people. They are good people
Correct.
who do not understand the language and do not understand what they're really doing. So what is one of the bills that you would like to talk about?
So I can go with one good and one bad if you want.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah. I just thought I've talked about some good ones, so I thought, and we have a lot of bad ones too. So talk about a good one first. That's great. I love the positive.
Okay. So the good one that I want to talk about is SB 249 by Representative Brooks.
Oh, okay. So that's HB. That's HB.
Oh, sorry, HB. That's what I meant. HB. You're
yes,
right.
HB 2. It's one of my favorite bills. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. So that's Utah Legal Personhood Amendments.
Yes.
And I mean, it does a lot of good stuff, but I think what's happening in Utah is a lot of people, and it's been a slow moving process, so they don't see it now. But Utah is rolling out all these public-private partnerships, and corporate personhood is it's been put above the people. And so that's a big problem. So I think it's really good that we're kind of starting to recognize that issue.
Yes, it is so great. And he's doing a bill to recognize that. And it's a great bill. Again, it's HB 249, personhood. Yep. And it really ties into what Marla Oaks was talking about earlier. And it also, when I was reading a lot of bills, which I have the last couple of years, I've been wondering, why are they changing the language from person to individual? Mm-hmm. So I looked up the definition of person. It's a human being. And then a single human being, and then I looked up the definition to individual, and I have to be honest, I was pretty surprised at the definition. It said a single person or a thing. It said a thing, an object. So an individual can be an object. So when you read a bill, when you put in to an individual, and you could read in to an object, do we want objects to either have rights or to be included in that kind of power over real life people?
Well, especially with AI coming on the scene. Think about the long reach of that. That's quite concerning.
Exactly. So, my first thought was with AI, that is really kind of terrifying. Yep. But even also with just with entities and with the things that are happening with the United Nations wanting to have power and control over us. So yeah, that's a great bill. Thank you for bringing that up. And that is by Walt Brooks, a great hero in St. George.
Yeah, I think we need to get a lot of support for that bill. So that
we do. We need to make sure he's supported. Yeah. Okay, what's the bill? What's the bill we need to be careful of? We got to kill.
Today, this is an election one. And I'm going to just kind of breeze over it because I need to dig in even deeper. But just at first glance, it's SB 107 by Todd Weiler. It's unaffiliated candidate amendments.
Oh, that, okay, there's another one we have to talk about too by Ray Ward.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to talk about SB 107 by Todd Weiler. Okay, why don't you describe it to us?
My biggest concern is it appears from this bill that they are setting up a tiered system, meaning if you're a party, you have a totally different system than you do if you're unaffiliated. And people need to really study the Bolshevik Revolution and the CCP revolution to see what they did to the party system and how that all kind of rolled out with their elections, and that they kind of flooded the system before, dismantling it. So understand.
Exactly. You kind of have to, the thing is, this is what is such a blessing, Jen, is history has a tendency to pattern. So it's not necessarily repeating itself. I agree. It's not exactly the same, but there is a pattern to history. And we can see the patterns of people that want to be in power and control. They think they are God, or they, like Bill Gates said, I don't believe there is a God, but if there is one, I am him. And so that is kind of this mentality, people that love power. And we have been warned forever about those who seek to have a lot of power, which is why we have federalism in our Constitution, why we have branches of government. And then in those branches, power is divided and subdivided, because people with a lot of power will tend to want to abuse it or control people. And it's human nature to want to control people. If you're a mom, I think you can relate to that. Have we not always wanted to, at times, not always, but have not all of us as mothers wanted to, at times, control our children? Like, they would just do what I say. Life would be simpler for both of us. But we are not, it is not our place to control. It's to educate, to teach, to even persuade, but not to control, not to force.
Let people have choice. Yep.
Yes, exactly. Yep. Okay, so you know what? While we're talking about that, and you know what, I do not have, I don't have the number, but Ray Ward is sponsoring this bill, and it is to make jungle primaries, so that there will be no caucus convention system. We will just, everybody runs in the primary. So anybody who wants from every political party, you just run in the primary and run all against each other. And then you will narrow down, and I don't remember if his bill narrows it down to 2 or 3, but then I think to 2. The top 2 people in the jungle primary will be on will be on the general ballot, and then you'll decide between the 2 top getters in the primary.
No, what it sounds like to me? It sounds like the new ranked choice voting was not, being, the public didn't want it. And this is the workaround to just, again, because they change things, rename them, shift them around. I also would say, go ahead.
Well, no, I'll finish and then I'll chime in.
It's just linking to Ray Ward. We can sneak into it, but it's the Lobbyist Disclosure Regulation Act bill too that needs to be, and I bring this up because that bill allows for lobbyists to reach out to your employer, kind of a deal.
Yes.
And the reason I bring that up is I don't know who is pushing all of these bills. We have an insane amount of bills. Where is this all coming from? To me, there needs to be tighter restriction on lobbyists. So even like ranked choice voting, right? All of these election things, where are they coming from? The people.
Jen, that is such a good question. That's a question, because it's like they end up with all these bills. I'm like, you know how you can know that these legislators did not come up with the bill? Because they're not very familiar with it. They haven't even, you can so often talk to them about a bill and they're like, oh, my bill says that? They haven't read their bill. So, they didn't write their bill. Or they might have written it and then it's unrecognizable by the time Ledge Research gets a hold of it and gives it back to them, because that can happen too. But totally. That they did not come up with these ideas on their own, because these are the same things being pushed all across the nation. So they didn't.
Well, they are.
Not come up with these ideas. And I wanted to just talk about Ray Ward's bill about the jungle primary. It does. I don't think it says jungle primary in his bill. So if you look under Ray Ward and for the bills that he sponsored, it's an election bill, and it just says like everybody there's a primary. And I think it is also a way to kind of dismantle the Republican Party, because it does dismantle it. Shotgun shot completely does away with the caucus system and the convention system. And I think that is what the real intent is, to just get rid of the interaction of people with their legislators. Then you can buy every single race, because then people don't ever meet, talk to, interface with the candidates.
I agree with you. They're slowly removing representative government.
They are. Yes.
Yeah. That's where it's going into a centralized, where like a lot of cities have started to remove public comments in the planning meetings. Why? You're supposed to be representing the people. Why would you remove commenting? I mean, another one of Ray Ward's bills is HB 306, and it's forcing municipalities into doing what they want with this high density housing.
Yes.
So, the people are getting further and further cut out from their representative government, and it's turning into, not to be hyperbolic here, but totalitarianism. We're turning into a very scary situation.
Well, and you know what, Jen, we want to blame the legislators, we want to play blame the UN, or we want to blame these terrorists that come into our country through other measures to be hyperbolic, to intentionally be hyperbolic. But you know what? It's really because the reason it can happen, and it is happening, and they've gotten so far, is because we as citizens have not been engaged. We have not been going to our city meetings. We have not been going to our county meetings. We have not been going to the legislative meetings. It has been so exciting to me to see so many people start to get engaged, especially on a statewide basis where they really are getting engaged in the legislature. But and this is one of my weaknesses, because I just can't. I don't know why I just get into state issues more than I do city issues. I don't know what my issue. I don't know what my issue is about going to city council meetings. I don't know why I don't really enjoy it. I get frustrated, but I'm calling my own self to repentance here. We all need to go, because the more local, the more it impacts you and affects you, and the more we can affect change on a local basis. The reason that our city has made some terrible decisions isn't because they're evil people. It's because they're completely unaware of the real consequences, and because the citizens have not shown up to say no. Because when our city wanted to tear down our city hall and build this big Taj Mahal building and have this big new center, guess what? The city showed up. And I'm talking 500 people. I'm not talking 30,000. 500 people showed up, and guess what they did? They said, okay, we'll back down. They said, we'll remodel our current building, and it is beautiful and very, very nice and functional, and cost 1/10 of the amount of money. I'm just using that. I'm making that 1/10. It costs a lot less. Tons.
Ladies, I'm sorry to interrupt. Our call-in studio, we're shutting it down. It's 1 o'clock.
No problem.
But you guys still have a whole hour. Keep right on going.
Okay, we'll just keep on going. So,
and we'll see you next week.
And
thanks.
Thank you. And then callers, keep that number on hand. Listeners, if you want to call in next week, it's going to be the same number, so you can always call in next week during the show. So keep that number handy. Okay, great, Jen. I do agree with you. And Jen is really someone who has called me to repentance and made me realize that I need to get much more involved in our city, things that are happening in our city, rather than just going, I'm super busy with the state. It's all I can do. And we need more people to show up. But I was just going to say that why we're in this situation, is because we've enjoyed our luxury. We've enjoyed our rights. We've enjoyed our prosperity and our wonderful way of life. And we have not paid a price for it. And we have not been on the front lines of being engaged as a whole. So I invite everyone, it's your job. We're the guardians of our liberty. We will lose it if we don't guard it.
100%.
Okay. All right, Jen, do you have another bill you want to talk about?
those are the ones that I had pulled for it. I mean, there's a lot of water stuff, happening, but yeah.
And there are a lot of water bills, and I just, they're not sexy at all.
No. So
but you know what? They're important.
They are important. I will say this for the audience. If you are unsure, natural resources and transportation are the most overlooked yet most important committees. And they just, because they're not sexy, like you said, they're not on the news every night. And you can't go read
social issues.
Right.
And you know what? A lot of us, like, I go into the committees where the social issues are. And so I'm in education, health and human services, those kinds of committees, even natural resources. But these are difficult issues. And we used to have a lady that really she went to every single water, and she stayed right on top of it, and she was amazing. And I hate to say, I don't know what happened to her, but she's not been up there the last several years. So literally, we had no one watching our water, and she was doing it all by herself. So thank you, Jen. That is an issue that we really need to get more people excited about and involved. And, it doesn't take a ton of time. If you could donate 3 or 4 hours a week, it's amazing what a difference you could make. But we all need help being aware of these. And if you will read these bills and get up to speed and learn about them, and Jen and I are both very happy to help you get up to speed and get educated on how this works. We have the people, boots on the ground, that will engage, that will go and talk to their legislators and say, do not vote for this. Watch what you're doing. And help to educate. But we do need people to, we just need people.
We just need people to sign up, even if you just listen to it and send notes in. It's the minimal. I want to just kind of emphasize for people, transportation is where they hide the bodies. It's where they put a lot of the stuff, because they know no one's paying attention.
Just watching.
And by the way, if you like having your car, if you like traveling, I suggest you start paying attention to transportation, because they have a bill to weaponize the vehicle this year. So they have. It must be bad, because they've had a few bills to weaponize vehicles for quite a while.
This one I haven't read. I know this one's probably much worse than the ones, because they've been doing this for quite a while. But just slowly, a little at a time, and then doing it under the guise of protecting our environment and being proper stewards. And that's what. And it sounds good. If you do not know how to read that bill, and legislators are like, oh, that sounds really reasonable. They have to know what the language really means and the power given to it, and who is getting the power.
Right. And this is where I go back to that lobbying stuff. I think, truth be told, there should be something required where you have to state the lobbyist that, wrote the bill or sent it in, so that the public knows.
Right.
Not less restrictions. I think more from lobbyists.
Because you can't be free if you don't have freedom of association. You have to be able to associate with others and to be able to get there. And, it is amazing, the vehicle and the mode of transportation we have now. We don't have to walk, ride a horse, or even a buggy. It is amazing, and we don't want to lose that. And it actually really supports our economy. Okay, So did you have anything else about that? Because I'm going to move on. I want to talk about HB 182, student survey. So you may or may not know, you and everybody in the world, you may or may not know that I have so many tabs up on my computer that then when I try to go onto this bill, I can't keep track of. I guess what I need to do is go to what I pull up, and then we'll talk about that. Okay, so this bill, this is sponsored by Representative Carrie Ann Lisenby, and it's a great bill because there are so many great bills. There really are. There's some really, really good bills. We have had for years protection for surveys when it used to be smart surveys, and it really still is, but they've changed their name so that because it's gotten a bad their reputation has become known to parents. And so parents stopped letting their children take these sharp surveys. So then they changed their name. So here's what Carrie Ann did. So we still have these great protections, but here's what the bill does. It takes out Utah Student Health and Risk Prevention Statewide Survey. It takes that language out, so then it applies to all surveys, not just those surveys. Now, the surveys are going into the schools under the guise of helping to prevent suicide. I don't know a person in the world who doesn't want to prevent suicide. I really don't. There's not a person I know that doesn't want to prevent. But do you think asking certain questions like how often do you have sex? How often do you drink? Do your parents have a gun in the house? Do your parents beat you? Or, have you ever been sexually molested? How many times have you attempted suicide? How often do you think about suicide? Do you think asking a child those questions is really going to help prevent suicide? I'm here to tell you. They're not asking it to prevent suicide. They're asking questions to data mine your entire family. The reason that I know about these surveys and what they say on them is because I have moms, because my kids are out of school now. I remember taking them when I was in school, and I thought they were pretty intrusive, and I lied about everything. I just said, oh yeah, I'm having sex 6 times a week. I'm drinking, a keg every night. Like, I just made up because I thought they were ridiculous and stupid. And so I know that they're not accurate. The results aren't accurate, but now they're not a written survey. They're online. And so the reason that we know is because parents have educated their children and they have told them not to take the surveys. So then when the kids are in there and the teacher, and they've opted out, they've told the teachers not to give it to them, but sometimes teachers forget, can't keep track, and they just give it out to all the students. And the students go on to take it, and the students are very wise. They take pictures. And so that is why we know what the questions are. And then students will remember and they will tell their parents. But we have actual documentation because students will take their phones and take pictures of it. And then they go tell the teacher, I need to call my mom, or I'm not supposed to take this. I need to go call my parents and leave. And because parents have been smart and savvy and they've educated their children, that's how we know what's going on, because otherwise we wouldn't. And I don't even know if the teachers know what's going on, to be really honest. I'm not sure the teachers, because it's online. I don't know the teachers have ever seen any of these questions. So that's a really great thing to educate your child on. But this bill does take that out so that that it applies to these surveys. And the current law is so good. It's really good. And this goes a little farther. It just adds in. The parents do have to give permission, but right now, parents give permission. If you send your kids to junior high, they give permission. You give it once, and they never have to ask permission again the 3 years your kid's at junior high or high school. So this says that they have to get written permission from the parents every year, so at the beginning of every year. And they do. And so parents, I would just encourage you, don't give permission. These are non-academic surveys, and that you don't have to give permission and you don't have to have your kids take it. And I would suggest you don't. And so that's
100. Yep.
Yeah. And then it does something else, and I'm sorry because I'm trying to remember what it is. They have to give if the parents want, they have to give them a copy of it. They have to be able to see it. So the parents can get access to it and they also have to tell the parents who has access to it, who at the current time or in the future will receive this data that is collected. That is huge. That is huge to know who's getting this information, where does it go? And before it can be shared with anybody, we have a right to know who else they share it with. I guarantee you these companies are not going to tell the schools where they're going to share it and sell the information to, but now it'll be illegal for them to not tell us. So that will be really great. And parents have a chance to see the questions. That's a game changer. So this is a really, really important bill. But the bill is, we don't have enough votes for it. So I would ask you again, we don't have time to list everybody that is in the House Education Committee, but if you go to le.utah.gov, le.utah.gov, again, you pull up and you can look for committees, and you go on the education committee, and then it will list everybody. And if you just email those people or call them and say, this is a great bill, Representative Lisenby has done an excellent job with this, please support this bill. That is what we really need to do. We really need to get people, constituents, but citizens say, please protect us as parents and please protect our children. You know what's happened in the schools. There's a lot of stuff happening there that we do not want to happen. Please clean up our schools. So that's a great bill, and we really need some help on that. Okay, Jen, do you have a bill that you want to talk about?
No, I mean, I think you've not another one. Like I said, water, there's some of those today that I think people need to watch water today, but other than
water is so huge. And okay, so Jen, have you ever done this? Have you ever gone on the website and pulled up water? Does it pull up all the bills?
Yeah, I've typed in water, but I have to go by day or do the, 2024 proposed bills.
Yes.
The
I find that subject matter doesn't work very well.
Right. No, it's
okay.
not. The other thing that I would say is that probably just
we
for Utahns to know is
okay.
Jen,
you're kind of coming in and out.
Water.
Jen, we kind of lost you a bit, so I don't know what was happening, but I think you were moving away from your phone. So would you please repeat that again? Thank you.
Sure. Can you hear me? I just want to make sure. Can you hear me?
Not as good as we could before you did that.
Oh,
but I can hear you. Okay, that's good.
Okay.
That's excellent right there.
Okay. So what I was just going to say is with water and actually all natural resources is people are going to have to realize they've layered on top of each other. So, this has been, like you said, a slow moving process, and layer upon layer upon layer has been put in place to slowly take it away. So what I want to say, and I'll leave it my, tidbits with this, is that people need to start shifting their mindset for next session, and it needs to be repeal, revoke, undo any unconstitutional bills. We can't be doing this anymore. The Constitution is the law of the land. Why are we acting like it doesn't exist?
Right. Yes. And federalism, they need to understand that. We do not have to acquiesce to the federal government because they tell us federalism is the Constitution.
Right.
And they have taken an oath to uphold both the federal and the Utah state constitution. So they do not have to acquiesce their power to the feds because we are the parents. The feds are the little kids. The states created the federal government. So don't act like, I have to do whatever the federal government wants me to. You do not. Stop taking their money. Stop being bribed by them, and stand up and do what's in the best interest of our state. And I think that's why we've lost so much power and so many of our rights is because we sold it for money.
100%.
And yeah, okay. So I am my experience tells me that in order to get our rights back, we kind of have to do it incrementally. We have to do it line upon line. And if we bear down and say, I'm a purist, so I want to just say, no, I want the whole entire enchilada. I want all my rights back now. And that is how I feel. That is what I really believe. But I have found it to be extremely ineffective. We end up getting nothing passed. So I don't know. What do you think on that? Do we?
I think you have to
incrementally. We don't have a lot of time.
Yeah, I think piece by piece. But I'd rather them start thinking that way than just trying to cram in 1,500 plus bills. I really think that there needs to be careful thought to what you are actually running. And again, who is asking you to run it? And number two, you need to be, I'd much rather you be putting out bills, for lack of a better term, or, revoke, right? Like we're taking away, we're getting rid of unconstitutional based laws, right? So health code, I think it's 26, is a pretty disturbing health code that needs to be, removed or looked at, addressed.
Right.
Like I'd rather them be doing that, get us back into a constitutional situation than pumping out bill after bill after bill.
Absolutely. And it is amazing how you can really change a bill with just a few words. Taking out a
Yes.
couple of words
Yes.
can change about both good and bad. So we have to be really careful and very cognizant of that. And water is a huge issue, and it's very difficult because it's very difficult in Utah because the individuals can't own water. It's all by our constitution. Water is owned by the state, but it needs to be controlled and managed by the state and by us as citizens. The state really is just a representative of the people. So yeah, I don't know. We're not going to get a lot. We're not going to be able to survive without water. We cannot have farmers or ranchers without water. They're completely dependent. And personally, I can't live very long without water. 3 days. I don't even know if I'd last that long. I'm a heavy drinker, so I like a lot of water. So we do need to protect water. That is a great one. Okay, and our lands. We've got to protect our lands, which we did talk about quite a lot with Marlo. Okay, so I think, and I know I tend to go on more of these social issues, and we really have so many things we have to work on. I hope I didn't lose Jen, but I think I might have. Okay, we're going to talk about HB 257, sex-based designations of privacy, anti-bullying, and women's opportunities. This is sponsored by Representative Kara Birkeland. And this is, again, a really great bill. It was presented in committee yesterday afternoon, and it did pass 12-3, I believe. And you know what? This bill is so barely, it's a good bill, but Kira has bent over backwards to be so accommodating, so respectful of everyone in this situation. And I love that. I love that our representatives really are so gracious and so kind, and they listen to everyone. They see everyone's perspective. Representative Birkeland has listened to everyone and heard their perspective. It is very important that as a woman and as girls in our society, as boys and as men, that we have private spaces we can go into and not be worried about a person from the opposite sex coming into our bathrooms and looking and watching. That is important. Private spaces are private. And as a woman, I have had men come into the women's bathrooms before. And it is it's very uncomfortable. I also find it dangerous because this is how voyeurism is performed. That is where it happens. They go into bathrooms and they stick their phones underneath your bathroom door or just take pictures or just watch. And women feel very safe to not be completely dressed. And this does not just cover bathrooms. This covers locker rooms, all private spaces of all kinds that are sex designated. And it's really well written, and it's done to protect men and women, girls and boys, but also it is to protect the transgendered community so that they do not get accused or singled out. And the bill does not require, contrary to a lot of statements made by a lot of people that were testifying, no one is asking for your ID. No one's asking to look at your private parts. No one wants that at all to happen. It is simply making sure we have designated areas, and it is illegal to go in a private place that is sex designated unless you are that sex. And it really balances, and it also, which I love, it says, whenever possible, create public and private, especially government agencies, to create a unisex bathroom. And that is really where we're headed, and it's going to take some time to get there. And that is a great solution. I love solutions to the problems. And that is a great solution that will stop anyone from having access to someone else. So we don't want to send our little girls into a girl's bathroom and have a man in there. Just because he's wearing a dress doesn't make him a woman. And having him in there looking at her, taking pictures or checking her out under the stall. That is not, violating her in so many ways. And the same applies for boys and men. They deserve to not be violated and have women go in there and just look around. and just check things out and watch just because they might cut their hair short. So it really is a really important bill, and it is done, I think, in just such a great way to protect everyone, because we all have equal rights, and women and girls, men and boys, have a right to be able to go into a girl's bathroom if they're a girl or a woman and have some privacy. And I just don't understand why this is not. It is pretty clear, and it is generally very, very accepted by far almost everyone. There's a very small sector of the community who takes offense to it. And I want to just say, no offense is meant. No offense is meant in any way. It is not to blame or to target or to suggest that transgenders people are going to do something inappropriate with you or with your children. It is not that at all. It is put into code and protect everyone equally. I don't think transgender people want to be violated either. I'm quite sure that they don't. And so this really does protect everyone. And so it just is a great bill, and I hope you will support it. Okay, let's see. HB 261 is, it just passed committee yesterday. And this is a bill by Representative Katie Hall. She is a great representative. She's really fabulous. And this bill applies to higher ed. And I'm just checking to see. Okay, so we did lose Jen because I couldn't find her anymore. And she just texted me that she got booted out. So it must be technology. So I like it. I like technology. I'm not the biggest fan of artificial intelligence because I think it is artificial. It's not intelligent. Okay, back to HB 261, equal opportunities. And this is a great bill. Again, it could be stronger, but it isn't, so that we can be really respectful of everyone. And it basically just says that an institution may not require, request, solicit, or compel a prohibitive submission as a certification or condition before taking action in respect to a huge list of things. So when an employer, a government agency, especially higher ed, okay, so higher ed, they can't try to coerce or try to find out certain things about someone, about their ideology, or where their position or their view or their contribution or effort in a specific area in their personal lives. They can't discriminate against them and rule them out for like virtually anything, like a raise or a promotion or even a transfer. That they can't use that ideology or things that they have, the way that they feel or what they believe, as a reason to keep them from getting a raise or a move that they want. And it's just to try to equal things out. Now, a great question was asked: it works both ways. It definitely does work both ways. Are we setting ourselves up here for attack? And we have already been attacked. The higher education is very much governed and controlled by the left, by the woke ideology. So this just gives some balance and just says you can't use someone's ideology to stop them from, if they merit a raise or merit, if it should be merit based. And that's what this bill does, just respects merit again in higher ed. So it's a great bill, and it did pass yesterday. And so we'll see what happens. That it passed committee. So it's going to go to the House floor next, and then we'll take it from there and see what happens from there. Okay, Representative Ivory has passed a bill several times. And last year, he passed a bill to get pornography out of schools, and he put in the bill a process for that to happen. And it was a good process, but it was a little difficult for some people to be able to tell what pornography is. And instead of taking out pornography, they took the Bible out. And this bill, HB 29, is a really great bill. I'm super excited about it. This bill just makes very clear if there is just there is a bright line, and that's the language from last year, but it just basically makes it so that there are certain things that are completely inappropriate, and there's no priority over that. If it's completely holy porn and it's inappropriate, then even if you can say, well, it could have educational value to it, or it could have a political value to it. If it's hardcore porn, it's coming out of the schools. We're not going to just keep allowing this to happen and let our kids be subjected to it. So there's a line where that will be inappropriate, and they do not have to go to the process of having it approved and having a committee look at it and read it and decide if it's inappropriate or not. If it's at a certain level that is really, really horrible, then they can just take it out. So I love that. So it just kind of cleans up and makes clear last year's bill, and that is HB 29. It's a really good bill, and I hope that you'll really support it. So that is kind of the bills that I had highlighted. HB 164 is CBDC. That is I don't know. I just know the acronym. I have the hardest time remembering the actual what it stands for. Central bank. It's central banking. I'm so sorry. This is the problem with acronyms. We use them so much, and then we can't remember what they mean. So CBDC is central banking digital currency. This bill says that central banking digital currency will not be considered legal tender in the state of Utah. It is being sponsored by Clancy. It is a great bill. Central banking digital currency will not be legal tender in the state of Utah. That is really big. That's really huge, because that will stop the feds who want to, and it's a global push to have that across the nation and across the world. And so this is a pushback from the state of Utah. We need every state to create that same legislation and push back in the same way. That is the only way to really win this, is we need every single state, at least 90% of them, to push back and say, we are not going to honor that. We want real money, and central bank digital currency is not real money. Well, that's a great bill. So, HJR 12 is a really great resolution. Now, it isn't a bill, it is a resolution. And resolutions are not binding. I need my producer to be here. They're not binding, but they matter. And let me tell you why they matter, because a lot of times people feel like, oh, it doesn't matter, it's not binding, I'm not going to vote for a resolution, just waste our time. But this resolution says to our state, to our governor, and it also says to our president, to the executive branch, that we are not a sanctuary state, and that we do not want to be a sanctuary state. And it describes the problems that illegal immigration causes for our state. And then it condemns the federal government for its failure to respond appropriately to the illegal immigration crisis, and not really do anything. Well, they've responded. They've just opened the gates and let everybody in. And so I think that this is a really important resolution. I usually don't care that much about resolutions for the foretold reasons. This is a really important resolution. So I would highly recommend that this be supported and that go through. And we are very pro immigration in the state. And I think most people we love people, and we love people from all over. America was made of immigrants. Most of Americans are not indigenous. They are not Native Americans. And we love our Native Americans. They were a wonderful asset, and they are a wonderful asset to us. And and we're so grateful for them. And we're really grateful for people that come legally all over the world. And they do. People come here legally all over the world. And that is all we ask, that you go through the process, the front door, so we know who you are. We know how to get a hold of you. We can hold you accountable. You know the laws and you know what's expected of you, and you assimilate and become American. We want you to become American, not consider yourself still a foreign entity living illegally in a country. So we've got to stop the promotion of illegal immigration. We need to stop that. It's time to end that. And really, people will self-deport if we stop with all the freebies. If there's not all the freebies, there's not all the incentives to come here, and we stop facilitating that, people will self-deport. They will go home. So that's a really important one, HJR 12. And let's see, HB 112 is, let's talk about that bill. HB 112 is, I love this bill. It's by a very principled and courageous Representative Jimenez. And this bill, it's very simple and it's very short. All it does, we teach sex education in this state, and parents can opt out. Most parents don't. Almost all parents have their children being taught sex education at school. We are living in a very sexual society. We've been really just sexualized so much, and I love what he's done with our sex education instruction. There are lists of things. And it says sex education instruction means a course material or a class or a lesson or presentation that is about, first of all, it's about sexual abstinence, because our state does require that we teach that, at least teach it. And then the second thing is human sexuality. And here lies the problem. As a teacher, kids are allowed to ask anything they want to. And as teachers, we can answer any question that they ask. So all you have to do is lead them into asking a question, then they ask it, and then you can answer the question. So that's how kids are being really sexualized at school and legally. So this takes out the words human sexuality out of instruction. So they're not going to be teaching human sexuality. They can teach sexual abstinence, human reproduction, reproductive anatomy, physiology, pregnancy, marriage, childbirth, parenthood, contraception, AIDS, sexually transmitted diseases, refusal skills. So it can teach all that, just takes out human sexuality, which is so not necessary to teach. If we're really teaching abstinence and refusal, we don't need to be teaching. And we're teaching reproduction. We're teaching everything a child really needs to know without overdoing it. So I love this bill. It's great. I'm really excited about it, and I hope that you will support it. And I really hope it gets passed, because it will really help us eliminate a lot of problems that we have in our state. Okay, we talked about that bill, and I'm looking here to try to think of some other. There are so many really good bills, and it takes a lot of time to read them and go through all of them. And so there's still a lot of bills that I have not read. And so we're working on it, and we will be talking about those more bills next week on our show. What I'm going to do is kind of take a complete shift, and we're going to talk about the Constitution. We have the most amazing Constitution the world has ever known, and it has produced the most amazing country that the world has ever known. And it has created more freedom for more people, and it has created more prosperity for more people. The standard of living of people in America far surpasses the standard of living of anyone else in the world. The middle class live better than a lot of high class or first class people in other countries. Our poor in America live better than the middle class of most every other nation. That is, we have such a great standard of living here. We are very blessed to live in this nation. And it was produced because of this Constitution. If you'll notice that once the founders created the Constitution, that our country went from making our food or making our clothing on looms to look at how we make clothing now. I don't know anybody that, unless you want to, there are people that I do know a few people that have a loom, but they don't make their clothes on a loom. They do use a loom, but they don't make their own clothes that way. They buy their clothes or even buy fabric to make their own clothes. We do not have to use our spinning wheels to create yarn and then loom it. That is what happened from the creation of the Adam and Eve until the time 250 years ago. And look at what's happened in the last 240 years. Look at the difference in clothing. Look at how we created, how we planted food and how we harvested food, how we planted it. From Adam and Eve till 250 years ago, 240 years ago, we used a plow. So manually went out there and put a plow, had to clear the land, put the plow, made a row, and planted our crops. Look at how we plant crops now. There is no way. We have so much more technology. It's amazing. It is so much faster and easier, and it produces so much more food than we could ever have produced before. It is incredible. Transportation, we have talked about that. We used to walk or ride a mule or a horse. And then we got to a point where we rode a buggy. 240 years ago, we were riding buggies or horses. And now, not only do we have cars, we have planes and jets. We have satellites. We have all this amazing technology of transportation. We have such a different lifestyle. And we need to appreciate the sacrifices made by so many of our founding fathers who really literally gave up their lives, literally gave their lives. They gave up, they didn't just die, they gave up all their time and their resources and their energies and their property and their intellectual property to create this nation and to create our Constitution. And it has made us very prosperous and very blessed. And it's an amazing Constitution. And I hope that you will start to learn a little bit about it and start to appreciate it. I'm going to take a few minutes today to talk about the 3/5 clause in the Constitution. It is extremely widely misunderstood. And the reason that I'm teaching it is I had a conversation with an attorney not long ago who was disparaging our country and our Constitution. Well, saying, well, our Constitution, it's not very good. The 3/5 clause, our Constitution, right in it, does not list people equally. It says that slaves are only count as 3/5 of a person. That is not a good Constitution. And if that's what our Constitution did, I would have to agree. But that is not what the 3/5 clause states. So I want to put yourself in the time of living in the time of the 1770s. Trying to come up with, right after the Revolutionary War, now we're trying to fix the Articles of Confederation or come up with a document that will serve all and that will give equal protection to every person. Now, as you probably know, there were a few issues that took up much more time than anything else. And one of them was representation. They spent so much time trying to decide between the big states and the small states how they were going to decide on the number and way that representatives would be elected and how they would be distributed. The small states, of course, said we want equal. We count just as much as the big states, so we want equal representation. Doesn't matter how small we are, we should have the equal as the big states. The big states said, are you kidding me? We're huge. We have many more population. Why should we be equal to those little tiny states that have far less population than we do? That is a hard one. I want you to put yourself, how would you solve that problem? Great compromise was to have two houses, which again separated powers, which again reinforced federalism to separate those powers and to say the feds have this power, the states have all the other power. And so they came up with the idea of the bicameral houses, where the House of Representatives would be determined by population and the Senate would be determined by equal representation, 2 senators from every. So they represented both. They did both, made everyone happy by doing both. And every law has to pass both bodies, both houses, both parties. They had to pass the House and the Senate, or the Senate and the House. And so when they were talking about representation, the slave states, now you've shifted from small states to big states. Now the slave states are saying, oh, yes, we like this population idea. We want to count every one of our slaves in our population. Now, let me ask you this. If you were against slavery, which I'm quite sure you are, I would hope that you would be, because slavery is unconstitutional, always was. It is immoral, always was, and is a violation of God's law, and always has been. So those states who said, we will not join the union if you get rid of slavery right now. We will join the union, but not if we can't keep our slaves, at least for a time. We're dependent on it. Our economy is dependent on it. We can't just get rid of them. And then take into consideration that if you just get rid of slavery overnight, boom, it's just gone. What happens to the slaves? You have just literally genocide on a people, because they don't have homes, they don't have an education to go get a job, they don't have food and resources. They need to get all those things. We owed it to them to make sure they had a way to be successful and could. And they definitely needed to be freed and given their freedom, given what was rightfully theirs by God. And but we also needed to do it in a way that would serve them and protect them. And frankly, I'm really glad that we didn't. There was a movement to just put them all on ships and take them back to Africa, which I'm glad we did not do that. We wanted to have a very diverse nation, a very diverse community. And we're so grateful for the citizens that are here from all races. And so I want you to, again, put yourself in the position, pretend that you are one of the signers. You're one of the delegates who had to vote. You can see where, in order to have unanimous and to be the only way to be a country and have this pass was to be a country. Because if we only had part of the states in our country and part not in the country, how long would it be before we would be having a civil war, before they would be trying to take each over, and it would be a nightmare. We knew we needed unanimity. We needed to be united. And so the slave states said, we will do this. We like representation, but we're going to count every one of our slaves in our population. And we want representation from all of those slaves, so that they will be equally represented. Okay, do you want the slave states to have equal representation for every slave? Do you want them to be able to increase their population and increase their voice, increase their votes in the House of Representatives, because they still have slaves? If you're against slavery, would you want them to count everyone equally and then give them more power and make it much more difficult to end slavery? If you've got states with a way high representation, they're having a lot more votes, and they're obviously going to have more say in the House of Representatives, and they are going to have a much harder time to end slavery. So if you were against slavery, would you want them to have that? If you were against slavery, the people against slavery said, no, we don't want you to count any of them. You should not count any slaves. They should not be counted, because that will give you more power. But then how does that sound? We don't want slaves to be counted? You don't want them to count at all? That sounds pretty racist, doesn't it? Although it was not intended to be. It was intended to not allow slave states to have higher representation and have more population count for more representation. So you can see, I think, if you're a reasonable person, you can see the dilemma that they were in. If you count all of them, they'll have more power. It will be harder to end slavery. If we count none, it will seem as if we don't count them. They don't matter. And that would be unfair. And of course, the slave state said, if you don't count them at all, we're not joining. We're not going to sign on. They couldn't get agreement with them. So they came to the compromise of counting the slaves not as 3/5 of a person, but as 3/5 of the population. So it did increase the slave states' population by 3/5, not as 5/5, not as 0, but as 3/5. So that was a compromise that both parties made in order to come to agreement and be able to create our amazing Constitution. The founders who signed that were anti-slavery, did it with the also what is in the Constitution, that they could not import any slaves after 20 years. They thought that would just, that 20 years slavery would end because they couldn't import them, and eventually they would become free, and that would just end up, people would die, and the time would go by, and the slavery would end. Unfortunately, that is not what happened. Unfortunately, there were people who did start to really gain from slavery, and they wanted to enforce it. And sadly, that was not just the white man. There were Black slave owners that perpetrated slavery as well, because it was very lucrative and very sad. But I hope that helps you understand the 3/5 clause. It wasn't considering that any person was 3/5 of the value of a person. It was 3/5 of all of the slave population would be counted in 3/5 of the population rather than as 5/5 of the population. Okay, I hope that helps. And I will, as we said, there are a lot of really great bills that are coming up, and there are new bills introduced every day in the House. I would like to invite you to go online to the website where you can get a really great education. We have the award-winning, it's actually won multiple awards in our state for our website, and it's quite user-friendly, and there are at least 3 ways to get everything. So if you don't know how to get to it here, just go in and experiment. You will find a way to get there. And sometimes it takes a little bit of time, but hopefully with a little bit of moving around. That's why what's really cool is that you don't have to be there's not just one way to get there. If you figure out one of 3 ways, you'll find it. So it's le.utah.gov, le.utah.gov. And you go on there and you have the website. And so when you first go on the home page, you can type in, right there is the search bar. You can type in the bill number. If you know a bill number, you put in the bill number right there. It pulls the bill number up, and it gives you everything on that bill. It tells you the bill. You can read the actual bill, read the language of the bill. Then you get to read the status, find out where it is. Has it gone through rules? Has it gone to a committee? Is it assigned? Which committee is assigned to? What was the vote in that committee? If it's been voted on, it will tell you the votes, who voted for, who voted against, and who was absent. If it's gone to the floor, it will tell you what day it went on the floor. It will tell you who voted for, against, or was absent. So you know exactly where that bill is. At any time, you can read the language. Be careful when you read the language that you read the current language and then look on the far right-hand side for any substitutes, and it will tell you if that substitute is adopted or if it's not yet adopted, if it's going to be presented. See if you want the substitute or if you do not want it. Before you tell a legislator you like or do not like a bill, make sure you look at the substitute, see if it's adopted or not, and see if you want them to adopt it or if you want them to not and you like the original bill. So that way you're talking from a place of information and knowledge. Do you listen to people? Much better if they're knowledgeable, or just the same if they don't know at all what they're talking about. Obviously, you're going to take into consideration someone who's really knowledgeable. That's a really important part. Now, if you don't put anything in that scroll bar, in that search bar, and scroll down a little bit, you will come to a calendar and it will give you the date. And so you can tap on there. Do you want to know what's going on today, or do you want to know what is happening tomorrow or the next day? They only post the agendas 24 hours in advance. Utah has the shortest legislative session of any state in the nation. We meet every year for 45 days, and I love it. I do not want it one day longer. It is plenty long. We should have less bills. Yes, I'm in agreement of that, but I'm also in agreement of freedom of legislators to, when they feel a need to sponsor a bill, especially if a constituent takes it to them, that they do. What we really need is to have legislators stop sponsoring bills that are taken to them by lobbyists, groups, and special interests. That's what we need. Stop stop taking on their bills and stop believing that it's a good bill because they tell you it's a good bill. You need to get a second opinion. You need to find out from a citizen if that's a good bill or not. Okay, so as you scroll down, it lists it's got the calendar there, and then if you put it on today's date, then it lists all of the different committees or the floor time that is happening at the Capitol that day. So you can go on there and it will list all the different committees that will be meeting or that are meeting. If it's in green, they are meeting. That is in session right now. They're meeting right this minute. If it is not in green, if it's white, they've already done it. It's done, gone, over. So you can go to archives and listen to it. If it's in black, that means it is still coming up through the day, but it hasn't started yet, because when it starts, it will go green. And it looks very brilliant and alive, and it looks like something that is happening. And so you can click on there and you click on the piece of paper, and it tells you what time, which committee and what time. The piece of paper tells you the agenda. So you click on there and it will tell you what the agenda is in the committee that will be up at 2 o'clock or at 9 o'clock or 8 o'clock. And so then it tells you each bill that is coming up. And it's super cool because you can pull that up and it lists the bills, and then the bills are linked. They have a hyperlink to the bill. So if you're like criminal threat or interference amendments being, I'm like, what is that about? You click on there and you can read the entire bill yourself, and you can find out if you like the bill or don't like the bill. And so you can find that out. Firearm modifications. Ooh, what's that about? You just click on there and you can read the bill for yourself. Know exactly what that is about. And so that is really how you use the website. It is so slick and so really well, it is really well put together. And then, as I said, all of those are recorded. So once they have the meeting is over, you can go on there, put the date, check the committee, and you can go and listen to all the archives. You can listen to all the debates from the committees and all the debates on the floor and see really where people are coming from. It gives you great insight, why people like it, why they don't, helps you know where you want to be. Great way to get educated. And then as you scroll down from there, there's another tab that says quick links. So again, you just click on there. It's like, I want to see what the interim schedule is. The interim is when they're not in session. They meet once a month, most months throughout the year. And you can just see what days they're going to be meeting. You can see the redistricting maps. You can see where your area is. You get to see your Senate area and your House area and your school board area. It gives you upcoming agendas. So anything that they already know that's upcoming is there. They don't tell us we only know 24 hours in advance what's going to come up on the next day on the agenda. So that's why we never give you very much advance. We say, we need you to come up here. We need you to send letters or make phone calls. And you're like, gosh, I wish they would let me know a week ago so I could plan. We don't know a week ago. They don't know a week ago. It's fast moving. So that's why we don't know in advance, because it moves quickly. It also tells you how to participate in a virtual committee meeting, which is huge. You used to have to go up to the Capitol and be there and attend in free to be able to testify or to speak in committee. That is no longer since COVID. We no longer have to appear. We can go online and viral, and you can testify from your computer. And, that is really, really nice for people who do not live close to the Capitol like I do. People that live rural areas, it is so difficult. They come up, drive hours, and they don't even know if they'll get to testify. They might change the order. They might hold the bill or might not get time to vote on it. And that is just devastating to people who have come from so far. So this really opens the door to people being able to get engaged. I can still be at work and I can go on there and I can give them my 2 cents and give them a piece of my mind and tell them why they should or should not vote for this bill. And citizen engagement is really what it's all about. First, I ask you to get educated and know the Constitution. So when you engage, you do it from a place of principle and with knowledge and always with decorum. But you want to testify that from a place of principles. You want to learn those principles and make sure that what you want is aligned with our Constitution. So that is my wish, and that is our time is ending. That gives us a wrap. But I hope that you will understand that you are the guardians of your liberty. that you have the opportunity, you have the stewardship, you have the power, and you have the responsibility to honor your freedom and everyone else's, and to get informed and take a stand. We look forward to seeing you at the Capitol often. Thank you and have a beautiful day.